Hakadosh Boker or Bekiim Bahalacha 3, day 60. This is page 118, Siman Chet, on Halacha Mem Tet, 49. If someone took off his talit, intending not to wear it again that day, but then he changes his mind and wishes to put it back on, he must repeat the Beracha before putting it back on. Although only seconds have passed before he took it off, it went off. And that's what we learned yesterday as well. Remember? Once it's Sechadat, that's it. He decided not to do it on anymore. 51 on the bottom. The Mishnah Berurah states that all the poskim agree that one must repeat the Beracha in this case, since he had no intention of putting it back on when he took it off. Thus, he ended the mitzvah. If he chooses to put it back on, even if it's going to be a moment later, it's like the beginning of the mitzvah. He has to make another Beracha, and the Halacha Berurah agreed with this. What about now folding the talit? So he says if someone takes off his talit, he folds it up and places it into the kuracha. It's like he declared. That means it's not that he did. It's like he declared that he does not want to put it back on. And therefore, again, if he wants to put it back on, even if it's going to be a few minutes later, again, another beracha. Exactly the concept, okay? Says footnote 52. There's a ruling of Mishnah Berurah by folding up the talit and putting it away. He demonstrated the intention that he doesn't want to put it back on again. So therefore, if he changes his mind, he would have to put it back on again. This is true even if he puts it back only in a few seconds later, as we already mentioned, and that's also the Halacha Berurah. But Rishon LeZion, right? He quotes this ruling in the Mishnah Berurah. He commented, this is the proper procedure the one should always follow in order to avoid a situation where the halacha is subject to the dispute of poskim. It's difficult to understand what does that mean. Meaning, Rav Ovadia comes and he says, by the way, whenever there's a machlok of poskim, do this. What does that mean? So he says like this. He says it's difficult to understand what I mean, but however, it makes no sense to say that he's instructing us to fold up the talit and put it away if we want to use the restroom. You understand what he just said? Rav Ovadia just said geunot. According to Maran, if you go to the washroom, you take off your talit and you come back and you put it back on. For sure, it's not going to be the half an hour. Do you have to make a new beracha? Yes. According to Maran, yes. According to Rav Ovadia, no. According to Mishnah Berurah, no. Why? Because we spoke about it. But technically, you could go. What? Fine, but that's Maran. That's Maran. You didn't do the biggest avirah, right? You're going according to Shulchan Aruch. You're fine, right? So now what happens? What happens now is, says Rav Ovadia, 1 second. If you have a problem, you know what you do? Very simple. You have to use the restroom. Take off talit, fold it, put it in the karacha, go to the restroom, come back, make a beracha. Gionut. Why? Because now, according to everybody, I would make it. Exactly. You have mea berachot. Yeah? You have it. Because once you put it back inside the talit bag, that's it. You're done. You're finished. Okay? I didn't understand you. That's the same thing. Hesechada means that you're putting it that you don't want to put it on again.
You know, in your mind that you coming back, you're not like going.
Doesn't matter. The second that you did an action, that's it. It's already enough. So he says in that case, he certainly intends to put it back on, even if he folds it up. So therefore, it must be that Rishon LeZion meant to say that whenever possible, one should avoid the situations about which the poskim disputed the halacha. Whenever possible, therefore, one should engage in some activity that he forgets altogether about wearing the talit, or he should make sure to at least wait a half an hour and then put it back on. Then all the poskim agree that he makes a new beracha. Although this means that one is saying an extra beracha, it's permissible to bring oneself to a situation necessitating an extra beracha if one avoids halachic dispute. This is always a very famous machloket, meaning famous halacha, meaning like this. I've got a machloket. Do I make a beracha on this or not? Yeah. So there's a question. Let's say I have to make 2 berachot. It's sushi. Do I make a beracha on the mezonot on the outside and let's say the shakol on the inside? Now I'm going to say to myself, listen, but maybe I have a machloket. Should I make the beracha or not make a beracha? Says if I'm making a beracha in order to avoid a machloket, that's not considered beracha shenetzricha. Because since I'm making the beracha just to avoid that machloket, there's no problem. So that's why there was such a concept. For example, I'll give you the example. The Ben Ish Chai. One second. The Ben Ish Chai comes and he says like this. Ben Ish Chai says, every single Suda, at the beginning of the meal, he used to come, take a candy right after the Kiddush, and make a shakol. And then have the candy. And then what? Then he would drink. Now, why? Technically speaking, we know that the gefen is going to be poter. Right? Liquids, it's going to be poter. But since right now he's trying to be ki'ilu to get out of any machlokot of other things, you're allowed to come and to cause a beracha shenetzricha. Because since it's a halachic dispute in what the halacha is, I'm allowed to come and I'm going to say, I'm making a beracha. Now, obviously, I can't just make the beracha, so I have to do it in another way. So he's doing it in a way that there's no problem. So the same thing here, he says, listen, you know what? You have a machloket. And just said, instead of saying, sabal, safek berachol hakel, and just put it, no. Wait half an hour. Or like what he said, you put it away, right? Here, it might be a little bit different because when you put it away, you knew that you're still thinking, fine. But But meaning that do something, mika esecha dat, that you know that kilu, I'm not there. I'm not putting back on. And now by doing that, when you do come and put it back on, you're going to be able to make a beracha according to everybody. He says if someone took off 51, if someone took off his talit towards the end of the tefillot, right? Or if it fell off his shoulders at that time, it is best not to put it back on. Since the poskim dispute whether it's necessary to say the beracha again or not, so just don't do it. Meaning you're at the end of, you're by Adon Olam. And by Adon Olam, oops, it fell the talit. Now there's a whole machloket. You make a beracha, not make a beracha. So don't now come and make a beracha and put it back on. You're already at the end of the tefillah. Just don't put it back on. That's it. Yeah? 53. The custom is not to make a new beracha when someone takes off his talit, right? And then he puts it back on, since that was his intention. Although Maran and the Ramah disputed the halacha, we follow Saveh Beracha Lakel. Nevertheless, it's important to realize that it is forbidden to form a mitzvah without saying a beracha when it's required. And according to Maran, one must always make a new beracha when putting the talit back on. Therefore, if someone needs to take off his talit, he should put it back on only if it's necessary for the mitzvah. So, for example, for Amidah, if it's not necessary for a mitzvah, it is best to refrain from putting back on, since our practice is not to make the beracha, and it runs counter to Maran. Thus, the Or Letzion ruled that if someone took off his talit for the end of the tefillah, he should not put it back on. He testified that was the practice of the Rosh Shiva, Rav Ezratia. Meaning, or for example, right, it was right after tefillat Musaf. He had to go to the washroom. So he goes to the washroom, he comes back. Why should he put on the talit again? He already said Amidas. He already is at the end of Shachrit. Right? So therefore, just don't put on the talit again. Why? Because now you're going to put it on. Now you have a machloket. You say the beracha, not say the beracha. So just don't put on the talit. Yeah? אין כלום. מה יש? אחרי עמידה. That's it. ומה? אז מה הוא אומר אחרי ראש חודש? Anyway, no, I don't understand. I'm 52. So halacha 52 now comes. This is a very interesting halacha. If somebody's talit falls off. So he says like this: someone's talit falls off, he must not repeat the beracha when he puts it back on, based on Saveh Beracha Lakel. This is the halacha, even if the entire talit fell into the floor. So again, machloket, Maran, right? And then, by the way, you should know, Moroccans go like Maran, right? The Dot Mizrach don't go like Maran, but it doesn't matter. But Moroccans go like Maran. Remember that. In all these cases, in all these cases, Maran, the Moroccans go like Maran. In all these cases, you should know. Yes, 100%. There is a Chaye Adam brought down in the Biur Halacha that I did hear that from Moroccans that we do rely upon, that if, for example, the Chaye Adam says, when you're making the beracha, you should have in mind that even if it falls off, you're going to put back on again. But you have to ki'ilu have that in mind, right? And then you don't have to make another beracha, even according to Manan. But again, that's only a... But really, by man, we go like Manan. Meaning some people say, no, Manan. And the Ashkenazim, here the Dot Mizrach are going like Ashkenazim. But the Dot Mizrach are going like the Ramah, Sabal, Saveh Beracha Lakel. In all these cases, you had like 7 cases here. They go like the Ashkenazim. We go like Manan. No, but that's he's saying in Shitat Maran, so it's all thing. מרן לא יכול לקבל את זה, הוא היה 300 מאות לפני. No, it's because this is what he's saying in Shitat Maran. So if he's saying that in Shitat Maran, I can't tell you what Maran holds. Yeah? So he says like this, 52 says, so somebody, let's see. Maran ruled in the Shulchan Aruch, 54 on the bottom. Maran ruled in the Shulchan Aruch, if someone's talit fell off from his shoulders unintentionally, he must repeat the beracha when he puts it back on. The Ramah does not comment. So here it's mashma that he actually agreed with this ruling. The Mishnah added that this case is even worse than the other previous case, right? Where the priest said that he said earlier in Halacha 47, we explained that according to some poskim, in the case that you no longer need to make a bracha, and the Halacha follows that opinion. This case is worse since the talit fell off without the person's knowledge. Meaning like this: there's going to be 2 different halachot. One halacha is I took off the talit. Why? I want to go to the washroom. Did I want to take off the talit? Yes, I took it off, and now I'm going to the washroom. I had the intention of taking it off and putting it back on. Still, according to Maran, do you make a bracha? Yes. No.
הוא לא בחר בעצמו ללכת לשירותים.
מה זה משנה? מה זה משנה? אתה צריך לעשות את זה. What? לא משנה כמה זמן. לא משנה כמה זמן. Yeah? So now what happens is like this. Yeah? All of a sudden, what happens is now, right? I come and I say, okay, fine. So according to that, you have to make a new beracha according to Maran. The Ramah says no. Again, machloket, you've got the Ashkenazim, right? And the Dot Mizrach, they go like the Ramah. Saveh Beracha Lakel. Right? Okay, fine. Okay, no problem. This case is much worse. Why? It completely fell. If it completely fell, he never had the intention of that. If he never had the intention of that, and Maran says you make a bracha, here the Ramah does not say no. Here the Ramah kept quiet. So says the Mishnah, this is much worse, this case. So he says the Od Yosef Chai likewise rule that if someone's talit fell off, he must repeat the beracha. It's also Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai. If any part of it remained on him, he does not. Meaning, as long as you still have a little bit, and even if the majority fell, right? As long as you still have something on you, you don't have to. Okay. So let's see the Rishon LeZion. The Ravadia came and he said, he quotes Bet Yosef, the Mukhe Yosef, the writes in the name of the Ritva, if someone's the talit fell off, the poskim rule that you don't make a bracha, right? And then that he heard that this is the opinion of Rabbi Yonah. So he comes and he says, the Mukhe Yosef ruled, however, that he must make a bracha, and he concurred with that ruling. And this is also Rabbi Yaakov, right, the author of the Tur. So since the Rishonim debated this issue, so he wants to say, Saveh Berachot Lakel, right? Even Keneged Maran. The Shulchan Gavua testified likewise, that's the common custom of the Rabbi Yonah, right? And the Ritva, since the poskim debated halacha, so we do Saveh Berachot Lakel. And that's also what the Yafel Lev says in the Kavachayim, right? And this is especially so if the person is still wearing a talit katan. Okay, the Rishon LeZion added that the same would apply if somebody's mezuzah fell off the doorpost. We did this, if you remember, in Sminchat Chaver, right? The mezuzah fell off the doorpost. He must not make a bracha again when he's putting it back to the place, even though he said according to Maran, yes, right? So he says in his own handwriting gloss to Yabi Omen, Rishon LeZion noted that the Bet Baruch, he counted the one must for sure make a bracha when he puts on the talit again. And again, the same halacha would apply to the mezuzah, but apparently he commented that this author was unaware of the other poskim that say no. Besides the list of Mishal and Tzion, right? There's also the Memesh Shlomo Kimchi, the Me'asev L'Chol Machanot, the Be'er Moshe, right? Rule that it is permissible to rely upon the ruling of the Shulchan Gavua, because remember that the Shulchan Gavua, right? What did he say? The Shulchan Gavua came and he said that the custom was to follow that you do not make a bracha. So basically, it comes out, right, that you actually have a machloket. What exactly is a machloket? You have mitzad echad Maran, you have the Rama, right? You have the Ben Ish Chai, right? And you have you have a lot. Say you do make a bracha. Then on the other side you have Rav Vadia. So Rav Vadia wanted to base that upon the Rishonim. Okay, so I will say again, and I will repeat. Technically speaking, our min hag was to make a bracha. Why? Because we don't just say because there's another Rishon, right? Just to say berachol lakel like that. You understand? Especially not keneged maran like that. You're right. Sometimes you want to say keneged maran, fine, but just okay, fine. So I can find you one rishon and everything. You understand? So because of that, it's very difficult to say sabal. What's sabal? So therefore, you saw that according to Shtam Maran, also the Rama, right, and also the the Mishabra, and that's what the Ben Ish Chai, they would make a bracha. So that's our custom. We will actually make a bracha in such a case.